A hard-working single dad is humiliated trying to buy a coat for his daughter until a quiet, elegant woman steps in with an offer that will change everything. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The boutique smelled like polished wood, lavender, and money. Soft jazz hummed through invisible speakers, and the racks were spaced like artwork. Each coat draped perfectly, each price tag hidden like a secret. Michael held Emily's hand tightly as they stepped inside, her sneakers squeaking against the pristine marble floor. She looked up at him, her cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes wide with wonder. "Whoa," she whispered. "This place is fancy." He nodded, adjusting the cuff of his too-thin jacket. "Just looking, kiddo. Let's find you something warm." The sales associate spotted them immediately, blonde, immaculate, and wrapped in something that probably cost more than Michael's car. She didn't move to greet them, she just watched from behind a counter, like they were something that had drifted in with the snow. Michael tried to ignore it. They walked slowly, passing rows of puffer coats in soft blushes, creamy whites, slate blues. Emily stopped in front of a coat the color of cinnamon toast, her fingers brushing the fur-lined hood. "Dad, feel this, it's so soft." He smiled and checked the tag, eyes narrowing. $289. His heart sank. He gently tugged Emily's hand. "Let's keep looking." A moment later, the blonde woman finally approached. "Can I help you find something?" she asked, voice flat, rehearsed. "Just seeing if you've got any kids' coats on sale," Michael replied. "Something for this one. She's growing faster than I can keep up." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "We don't really do sales," she said, glancing at Emily's scuffed sneakers. "You might try down the block. There's a thrift shop." Michael blinked, heat crawling up his neck. "Right." Emily looked between them, then back at the coat. "It's okay, Dad," she whispered. "I don't really need it." But he saw the way her eyes lingered, and it cut him deeper than any insult. He turned to leave, jaw tight, shoulders stiff. As the door chimed behind them, laughter floated from the counter, soft, careless, cruel. Michael held his daughter's hand a little tighter, swallowing the bitterness. They were almost outside when a quiet voice behind them spoke. "Wait," it said, calm and clear. "Let her have the coat. I'll take care of it." Michael turned, the door still half open behind him, cold air brushing the back of his neck. The woman stood near the register, not part of the boutique's sleek staff. She was wrapped in a long, charcoal gray coat, wool draping her frame like it had been made just for her. Dark hair tucked behind her ears, no makeup except maybe a little mascara. Quiet elegance, unassuming. He blinked, unsure he'd heard her right. "Sorry?" She stepped closer, not smiling exactly, but not cold either. Her voice was soft, but firm-like. She wasn't used to repeating herself. "I said, let her have the coat. I'd like to buy it for her." The sales associate stiffened, suddenly alert. "Miss Langford, that's very generous, but—" "It's fine," the woman interrupted, her eyes never leaving Michael's. "Just ring it up." Michael shifted his weight. "We don't take handouts." "I know," she said, without flinching. "That's not what this is. I saw the way she looked at that coat. It reminded me of someone." Emily peered up at her, clutching the sleeve of Michael's coat. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice small. "It's really warm." The woman's gaze softened. "I'm sure." Michael's pride tangled with his gratitude. He didn't like being in this position, standing in a store where everything cost more than his grocery bill, letting some stranger fix what he couldn't afford to give. But Emily's cheeks were red, and her fingers had been trembling since they stepped inside. And the truth was, she needed the coat. He exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said. "Thank you." The woman just nodded and turned back toward the register, giving the sales associate a look that left no room for argument. The coat was neatly folded and bagged within moments. As they stepped outside, the wind caught Emily's scarf, and Michael tucked it gently into her collar. "Wait," he said, looking back. "Why'd you do that? Really?" She paused, halfway back to her car. Because someone once did the same for me, and I never forgot it." Then she opened the door, stepped inside, and drove off, leaving behind a stunned father, a beaming daughter, and a moment that would ripple further than any of them could see. Michael wasn't sure why he didn't walk away. Maybe it was the way she looked at Emily, not with pity, but with something quieter, like understanding. Maybe it was how she didn't wait for thanks or expect anything in return. Or maybe, just maybe, he was tired of pretending he didn't want to know more. "Hey," he called, jogging a few steps toward the woman's car just as she reached it. Can I buy you a coffee? To say thanks?" She blinked, surprised. Then a faint smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You want to buy me a coffee?" He rubbed the back of his neck, already regretting it. "Yeah, I know. It's not a designer coat, but—" "I'd like that," she said before he could finish. They found a cafe 2 blocks down, warm, quiet, with wood-paneled walls and mismatched mugs that felt lived in. Emily sat at a corner table with a muffin almost as big as her face, carefully picking off the blueberries. Michael and the woman took the table next to her, steaming cups between them. "I'm Michael," he said, extending a hand. She took it, firm and warm. "Anna." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that wasn't uncomfortable so much as careful. She wore the same expression she had in the boutique, measured, watching. Not in a judging way, but like someone who'd spent a long time learning when to speak and when to just listen. "You don't look like someone who hangs around second-hand coat shops," he said finally. She smiled softly. "Neither do you," he chuckled. "Fair." Anna stirred her coffee. "I was just walking. I do that sometimes. I don't like being driven everywhere." He tilted his head. "Driven?" She paused, like she hadn't meant to say that. Then she shrugged. "It's complicated." Michael didn't press. He recognized the edges of a story too heavy for small talk. "Well, wherever you came from, I'm glad you stopped." Anna glanced at Emily, who grinned mid-muffin. "Me too." Their eyes met briefly, cautiously, and in that flicker of quiet connection, something unspoken passed between them. Neither of them named it, but both of them felt it. The start of something. The coat was a perfect fit. Emily twirled in the parking lot, arms outstretched, the cinnamon-colored fabric flaring around her like a cape. The faux fur hood framed her face, cheeks pink from the cold, and smiling so wide it nearly cracked Michael's heart open. She looked like she belonged in a winter catalog, not bundled in hand-me-downs and thrift store zippers. For once, she looked warm, really warm. "Dad, feel how soft it is," she said, grabbing his hand and rubbing it along the inside lining. Michael chuckled. "It's like hugging a blanket." Anna stood a few steps back, hands tucked into her coat pockets, watching them with that same quiet expression, somewhere between gentle amusement and something more guarded, like she wasn't sure how close she was allowed to stand. Emily skipped over to her and beamed. "Thank you, Miss Anna. This is the nicest coat ever." Anna crouched slightly, smoothing down the collar of Emily's coat. "You're very welcome. It looks like it was made for you." Michael watched the two of them, his daughter glowing. Anna's gentle voice carrying through the cold, and that strange warmth came creeping into his chest again. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, something that had been dormant for a long time. He wasn't sure what to say as Anna straightened and looked at him. The snow had started again, soft flakes dusting her dark hair and shoulders. She didn't brush them off. She just stood there, serene, as if the storm didn't bother her. "Can I walk you to your car?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." They walked slowly, the sound of crunching snow beneath their boots the only thing between them. "You didn't have to do that," he said after a moment. "I know," she replied, not looking at him. "But I wanted to." Michael studied her profile, the way her jaw tightened slightly like she was used to people questioning her kindness. "Well," he said, his voice soft, "thank you. Not just for the coat, for the smile, too." Anna finally looked at him, and for a moment she let her guard slip just enough for something real to shine through. "Any time," she said. And she meant it. The warmth didn't last. By the next morning, Michael was back under the hood of a rusted-out Honda with a seized engine and a customer who couldn't afford the repairs. The garage smelled like oil and old coffee, the floor slick with melted snow and grit tracked in from boots. His fingers ached from the cold, his knuckles scraped raw from hours of wrenching. Reality had a way of snapping back hard. He wiped his hands on a shop rag and glanced at the time. Only 10 in the morning, and already he felt like he'd lived a whole day. The night before played in fragments in his head: Emily's laughter, Anna's quiet smile, the softness in her voice when she spoke to his daughter, and the way she'd looked at him before driving off, like she saw something worth noticing. He didn't know what to make of that. He didn't know what to make of her. A car backfired in the bay next to him, snapping him out of it. He reached for his socket wrench, muttering under his breath, "Focus!" Rent was due in 4 days. The utility bill was sitting in his glove compartment, unopened because he already knew what it said. He was down to 3 gallons in the gas tank and still needed groceries for the week. Whatever spark Anna had brought into his world, it didn't pay the bills. "Turner," his boss called out from the office. "Got another one for you. Brake job. Guy's waiting, so move fast." Michael nodded, rubbing his jaw. On it. By the time the sun dipped low behind the snow-laced buildings, Michael's coveralls were stained black and his limbs ached like he'd been through a war. He climbed into his car, the seat springs creaking beneath him, and stared out the windshield for a long moment before starting the engine. Emily's coat sat folded neatly in the back seat, forgotten in the morning rush, cinnamon brown against the faded gray of his upholstery. He reached back and ran a hand over the soft lining, the memory of Anna's voice echoing in his mind. Then he shook it off. Nice moment, he told himself. But moments don't change reality. Not his. Not now. It was just after 9 when Michael finally settled onto the worn couch in his cramped apartment, his body aching from another 12-hour shift. The heating hissed softly through the vents, doing its best against the chill seeping in through the windows. Emily was asleep, curled beneath a blanket with her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest, the new coat draped over the back of the armchair like a trophy. Michael leaned his head back and closed his eyes. Just for a second. The buzz of his phone startled him. He glanced at the screen, expecting a late notice, or maybe one of the guys from the shop. But it wasn't a number he recognized. The area code, though, it was local. "Hi, it's Anna. I hope it's okay I reached out. Just wondering how's Emily liking the coat." Michael stared at the screen for a beat longer than he meant to. Then, before he could overthink it, he typed back. "She loves it. Wore it to bed the first night like a sleeping bag. I had to convince her to hang it up." 3 dots appeared. "That makes me smile. She looked so proud wearing it. You too, by the way, even if you were trying not to." He snorted quietly. A laugh. "The first one in days." It caught him off guard. "I wasn't trying. That's just my face." "Sure it is," she replied. A beat passed, then another message. "Anyway, I didn't mean to bother you. Just wanted to check in." Michael stared at her words. In his world, people didn't check in. Not unless they wanted something. But Anna hadn't asked for anything. Not then, not now. He tapped out a reply. "You didn't bother me. It was nice hearing from you." A few minutes passed with no response. Then, "Good. Maybe I'll check in again sometime." He set the phone down and let the quiet settle. For once, it didn't feel heavy. He looked over at Emily, then at the coat, and for the first time, in what felt like forever, Michael went to bed with something unfamiliar, tucked in beside the worry, something small and steady: hope. The next morning, sunlight spilled weakly through the blinds, casting pale stripes across the kitchen table where Emily sat, swinging her legs and munching on a piece of toast. The cinnamon-colored coat hung neatly on the back of her chair, sleeves still a little too long, the hood resting like a crown behind her. Michael moved through the kitchen, pouring coffee into his chipped mug, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The apartment smelled like burnt toast, and something sweeter hope maybe, though he'd never admit that out loud. Emily glanced up from her plate, chewing thoughtfully. "Dad? Yeah, kiddo?" She tilted her head. "Is Miss Anna your new friend?" Michael nearly choked on his coffee. "What?" She shrugged, as if it were the most obvious question in the world. "You smiled when you got her text last night, and you don't smile at your phone unless it's football stuff or funny cat videos." He blinked at her. "You watch me way too closely." Emily grinned. "That's my job." Michael took a seat across from her, resting his arms on the table. "Anna's just someone who helped us out, that's all." Emily was quiet for a beat, then looked down at her toast. "She's really nice. I liked her." "I know you did. Are we going to see her again?" Michael hesitated. He hadn't texted her again. Hadn't planned to. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wasn't sure what it would mean if he did. People like Anna didn't usually stick around. And people like him didn't usually get lucky twice. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe." Emily didn't push. She just nodded and took another bite, crumbs dusting her chin. Michael watched her for a moment longer, then stood and rinsed his mug. But as the water ran and the morning clattered forward, he couldn't shake her question. "Are we going to see her again?" He told himself it didn't matter. That life didn't work like that. Still, as he tied his work boots and grabbed his keys, a small part of him hoped the answer might one day be yes. It started innocently enough curiosity. That was all. Michael sat at the kitchen table after Emily had gone to bed, the apartment finally quiet except for the low hum of the fridge and the soft ticking of the wall clock. His phone rested in his hand, thumb hovering over the screen. He told himself it was harmless. Just a quick search. Everyone was online these days, right? He typed in her name, Anna Langford. The results were strange. A few listings for people with the same names scattered across the country, but none of them looked like her. No LinkedIn, no Instagram, no Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, nothing, not even a stray tagged photo or an alumni page. It was like she didn't exist outside of that boutique, that moment, and the warm text that followed. Michael frowned, scrolling slower, reading between the lines. A few Anna Langfords came up on charity boards, real estate records, old press releases for art shows or scholarship funds. But the faces were wrong, the energy was wrong. Those names belonged to other lives. But his Anaif, he could even call her that, was nowhere. It didn't make sense. She carried herself like someone used to attention, but not seeking it. She'd stepped into his world and made a quiet ripple, then vanished again, like a stone skipped across water that never quite sinks. He leaned back in his chair, phone still in his hand, the screen dimming to black. Who was she? Someone rich? Someone important? Someone hiding? The thought unsettled him more than he expected. Maybe he'd made a mistake letting her in at all, even just for coffee and a coat. He didn't have space for games. His life didn't allow for mystery. But another part of him, quieter, harder to ignore, was intrigued. The mystery wasn't threatening. It was magnetic. She hadn't acted like someone dangerous. She'd acted like someone trying to disappear, not deceive. Still, the silence around her name stuck with him. A ghost in the digital age. Michael sighed and set his phone down. Whatever Anna Langford was hiding, she was good at it. And now, he wasn't sure whether to chase the truth or leave well enough alone. The snow came fast. 1 minute it was flurries, the kind that danced in the air and melted before they hit the ground. The next, it was a full-blown whiteout, swallowing the streets of the town in a quiet fury. Michael squinted through the windshield of his aging sedan as the wipers worked double time, smearing half-frozen slush across the glass. He pulled into the gas station on the edge of town, the one with a flickering sign and a heater that wheezed like it was coughing out its last breath. Emily was in the back seat, bundled in her new coat, reading a worn paperback with a flashlight clipped to the cover. She barely looked up. "I'll just be a second," Michael said, grabbing his gloves. As he stepped out, the cold slapped him like a wall. He hunched his shoulders and moved fast, sliding his card into the pump, hands stiff and red in seconds. Snow piled up around the tires, the wind howling low through the empty station. That's when he saw her. Across the lot, parked awkwardly near the air pump, was a sleek black car nearly buried in snow. The driver's side window was cracked just enough for visibility. And behind the wheel, staring down at her phone with a scowl, was Anna. He blinked once, twice. Then, before he could talk himself out of it, he waved an arm. She looked up, surprised. Her face lit with recognition. He crossed the lot, boots crunching on the snow-packed pavement. You know, for someone who vanishes without a trace, you've got a habit of showing up in the middle of nowhere. Anna laughed genuine, breath visible in the frigid air. I could say the same about you. What happened? Dead battery. I was waiting on a tow, but... She held up her phone. No signal, and apparently I'm not as good at roughing it as I thought. Michael glanced at the thickening snow. Tow truck's probably 3 hours out. You'll freeze out here. Come on, I'll give you a ride. She hesitated, then nodded. All right, I trust you. He opened the passenger door of his car, brushed the snow off the seat, and helped her inside. This time, he was the one doing the saving. And it felt right. The next day, Anna texted him. You saved me from freezing. Let me return the favor. Dinner? Bring Emily. Just something simple. Michael stared at the message for longer than he should have. It wasn't the invite that surprised him. It was how easy she made it sound. Like it was no big deal. Like she didn't know what dinner meant in his world. Paper plates, tight budgets, reheated leftovers. But still, something in her tone made it hard to say no. We're in, he finally replied, adding, as long as there's dessert. Emily's terms, not mine. Her response came quickly. Deal. That evening, Michael found himself knocking on the door of a modest but elegant brownstone tucked into a quiet side street. The lights inside were warm, the windows glowing softly against the night. Emily stood beside him, fidgeting with her braid. I don't think I've ever been to a house this big, she whispered. It's not that big, Michael said. Though he was thinking the same thing. Anna answered the door in a cozy gray sweater and jeans, barefoot, her hair pulled back. No trace of the woman who'd bought a designer coat without blinking. Just Anna. Come in, she said with a smile that didn't feel rehearsed. Inside, the home was beautiful, but lived in. Art on the walls, yes, but also a basket of mismatched blankets, a stack of books on the end table, the faint smell of something baking in the oven. They ate around a small round table in the kitchen. Chicken pot pie, salad, warm bread. Nothing extravagant, just comforting, real. Emily chattered between bites, telling Anna about her school, her favorite books, how she wanted to be a zookeeper. Anna listened with full attention, nodding and laughing at all the right moments. Michael watched them, quiet at first. But somewhere between the second slice of pie and Emily's dramatic retelling of her school's fire drill, he felt the tension in his shoulders ease. He started to smile, then laugh. By the time dessert hit the table, homemade brownies, still gooey in the center, Michael wasn't thinking about the difference in their worlds. He was thinking about how easy it felt, sitting there. How rare that was. Dinner ended late, but none of them seemed to mind. And as they stepped back out into the cold night air, Michael felt something he hadn't in a long time. Like maybe this wasn't just a moment. Maybe it was the start of something real. Michael didn't consider himself the kind of man who paid attention to furniture. But as he stepped deeper into Anna's home after dinner, he couldn't help but notice how everything seemed deliberate. The kind of quiet elegance you only found in magazines. Wide plank hardwood floors. Soft lighting that glowed instead of glared. Walls painted in muted tones that felt more like a spa than a house. Nothing was loud or showy. Just expensive in the way you had to be raised around money to pull off. There was a painting above the fireplace. Something abstract, modern. He didn't know art, but it looked like it had a name and a price. A grand piano sat near the window, untouched, the keys dust-free and gleaming. Emily, of course, didn't notice any of it. She was too busy bouncing on the edge of a plush armchair, excitedly showing Anna a picture she'd drawn of a fox in a tutu. "I gave her roller skates this time," Emily explained proudly. "Because ballerinas can skate too." Anna leaned in like she was studying a masterpiece. "She looks like she's on a mission. I love that." Michael watched the two of them from the doorway, arms crossed loosely. "Your place is something." Anna straightened and smiled. "Too quiet most days." "It's beautiful," he said, then added, "Don't take this the wrong way, but you don't exactly come off like someone who lives here." She raised a brow, amused. "And what do I come off like?" "I don't know," he said honestly, "just not the crystal chandelier type." Anna glanced up at the fixture above the dining table. "It came with the place," she said dryly. They both laughed. Then she shrugged, hands in her back pockets. "I've lived in houses with more rooms than I could count, but this one, it's mine. And I don't really care what it looks like. It's just a place to breathe." Michael nodded, not quite knowing what to say. She always surprised him just when he thought he was starting to understand her. She gave him a new piece of the puzzle, and every time he found himself wanting more. The next evening, while Michael fixed a leaking pipe beneath the kitchen sink, he heard a sudden wail from the living room. A familiar one, Emily. He ducked out from under the counter, wiping his hands on a dish towel, and found her sitting cross-legged on the floor, shoulders hunched, her bottom lip trembling. In her lap lay the sad, limp remains of her favorite toy, Benny the giraffe. One of its stitched legs had torn clean off, the stuffing poking out like a wounded soldier. "I didn't mean to," she sniffed. "He fell off the couch and landed on the heater thingy." The seam ripped. Michael knelt beside her and wrapped his arms around her small frame. "It's okay, kiddo, we'll sew him up." "But he won't be the same," she mumbled into his chest. He sighed, running a hand down her back. Benny had been with her since she was 2. That toy had been through every fever, every bad dream, every long car ride. Of course he wouldn't be the same. But neither was life. That night, after she finally drifted off, Benny patched as best Michael could manage. He stared at the worn fabric in his hands. The stitches were uneven, the thread didn't match. But it was the best he could do. 2 days later, they stopped by Anna's place for dinner again, Emily clutching Benny close, still tender about the injury. As they stepped inside, Michael spotted something sitting on the edge of Anna's entry table. A stuffed giraffe. Not Benny, but close. Too close to be a coincidence. Same caramel-colored spots. Same floppy neck. A newer, cleaner version. Anna noticed his glance and smiled softly but said nothing. Later, when Emily saw it, her eyes widened. "He looks like Benny's cousin." Anna knelt beside her. "Maybe he is. Maybe he came to help Benny feel better." Michael stood quietly in the corner, watching his daughter beam. He didn't call it out. Didn't question the timing or the obvious generosity. He just nodded once, barely perceptible. "Thank you." Anna met his eyes and gave the smallest, knowing smile. "You're welcome." The invitation came folded inside a napkin. Michael found it after dinner, tucked beside his plate with a small note in Anna's looping handwriting. "Tomorrow night. City Square. Wear warm boots, trust me." He almost didn't say yes. There was always something else that needed doing, shifts to trade, bills to stretch, laundry that never seemed to finish. But when he told Emily about it, her eyes lit up like someone had flipped a switch inside her. "A light festival?" she gasped. "With hot chocolate and everything?" "I guess," he said, smiling despite himself. "Sounds like a big deal." "It is a big deal," she squealed. "You have to wear your good jacket, Dad, not the oil-stained one." The next evening, bundled in layers and mittens, they made their way into the heart of town. The square had been transformed trees, wrapped in golden string lights, lanterns dangling from the lampposts like glowing orbs. Music floated through the air, soft and tinkling like it belonged in a snow globe. Anna was already there, waiting near the entrance, her coat dusted with snowflakes. She waved as they approached, her cheeks pink from the cold, her eyes bright. "You made it," she said, smiling at Emily first, then Michael. "Would have been a crime not to," he said, nodding toward the lights. This is something. Emily took off running toward the nearest display, a tunnel of white lights that pulsed like star sand. Anna and Michael followed slowly behind. They do this every year, Anna said, tucking her hands into her pockets. My parents used to bring me when I was little. You're full of surprises, he said, glancing at her sideways. She looked up at the lights, not meeting his gaze. Not really. I just forget how to share sometimes. They walked in silence for a while, stopping here and there to admire an ice sculpture or help Emily take a picture. But more often than not, Michael found his eyes drifting not to the lights, not to the crowd, but to Anna. The way she laughed when Emily threw snow in the air. The way her breath clouded in the cold. The way, when she looked at him, it felt like he wasn't just another guy in a sea of strangers. For a night at least, they weren't strangers. And that was more than enough. The glow of the festival faded behind them as they walked toward the edge of the square, where the crowd thinned and the music gave way to the hush of falling snow. Emily was a few steps ahead, dancing between puddles of light, her laughter echoing like a song only she could hear. Michael and Anna followed slowly, shoulder to shoulder, neither speaking for a while. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It had settled in like something familiar, like a coat that fit just right, even if you didn't remember putting it on. She's amazing, Anna said softly, nodding toward Emily. She is, Michael replied, voice warm but tinged with something heavier. She's the best part of me. Anna looked over, sensing the shift in his tone. You ever talk about her mom? He didn't answer right away. They reached a bench just outside the festival's border, dusted with snow, quiet and still. Michael sat down, brushing the flakes from the seat beside him. Anna joined him without hesitation, her breath misting in the cold. I don't talk about her much, he said finally. Not because I don't want to, just, it's hard to find people who ask and actually want to hear it. Anna didn't speak, didn't nod or prod. She just waited. Her name was Sarah, he said. She had a laugh that made people turn around in the grocery store. Bright, full. We were high school sweethearts, the kind that everyone thought wouldn't last, but we did. At least for a while. Anna glanced at him gently. What happened? Car accident, he said quietly. Drunk driver. Emily was too. The silence after that wasn't empty, it was heavy, reverent. I had no idea how to raise a baby by myself, Michael went on. I was 25, working at a garage, barely holding it together. Most days, I still don't feel like I'm doing enough. Like, I'm not enough. Anna turned toward him, her face soft. Michael, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She's happy. She's kind. She's strong. That didn't happen by accident. He looked at her then, and her hand found his slowly, cautiously, but sure. He didn't pull away. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, not pitied, not judged, just held. The ride home was quiet, but not the kind that felt awkward or unfinished. Emily had fallen asleep in the back seat, her head tilted against the window, her breath fogging up the glass. Michael kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting loosely on his lap, every so often glancing at the woman sitting beside him. Anna watched the snow fall through the windshield, her expression unreadable. She hadn't said much since they left the festival. Not out of distance more, like she was letting the night settle, letting his words breathe. He thought about what he'd shared, about Sarah, about the weight he carried every day and never spoke of. Most people, when they heard I'd either rushed to fill the space with awkward condolences or changed the subject entirely. But not Anna. She hadn't said much at all, and somehow that had meant more. At a red light, Michael risked a glance at her. You're quiet tonight. Anna looked over, a small smile ghosting her lips. So are you. I guess I'm just not used to being around someone who actually listens. She didn't respond right away, just turned her gaze back to the falling snow. Sometimes listening is all people need. Not advice, not answers. Just someone willing to hold the silence with them. The light turned green. They drove a few more blocks, the town slipping by, dusted in white and asleep beneath the soft hum of streetlights. Michael wanted to ask her things. Who was she, really? Where did she come from? How did someone with her calm confidence, her depth, stay so carefully tucked away from the world? But every time he opened his mouth, the questions caught in his throat. And yet, the quiet between them wasn't empty. It was charged-filled with something tender, something that didn't need names just yet. When they reached her place, Michael pulled up to the curb, shifting the car into park. Anna turned to him, her voice low. "Thank you for tonight, and for trusting me." He nodded, not trusting himself to say much more. She opened the door, then paused, glancing back. "I meant what I said. You're doing more than enough." And then she was gone, slipping into the night like a secret. Michael sat for a moment longer, engine idling, the echo of her words wrapping around him like a blanket. He hadn't expected this, but now he wasn't sure how to go back to a world without her in it. It was a Thursday evening, just past 7, when Anna knocked on their door. Michael opened it to find her standing there, bundled in her usual gray coat, snowflakes clinging to the shoulders. In her hands was a shoebox, wrapped not in paper but in a soft cotton bag with a drawstring. Simple, elegant, unmistakably expensive. "Hey," she said softly, eyes warm. "I saw these the other day and thought of Emily. Figured they might help with the cold walk to school." Michael didn't answer right away. He just stared at the box, then at Anna, then back again. Behind him, Emily's footsteps padded down the hallway. "Is that Miss Anna?" she called. Michael stepped outside quickly, pulling the door half shut behind him. "You didn't have to do that," he said, lowering his voice. "I know," Anna replied, "but I wanted to. That's the second time you've said that." She tilted her head, still holding out the box. "And I meant it both times." Michael rubbed the back of his neck, jaw tight. "Anna, I can't keep taking things from you. First the coat, then dinner, now this? It's too much." We're not a charity." That word, charity, hung in the air like frost. Anna's smile faltered, just slightly. She pulled the box back to her chest, fingers tightening around the edges. "That's not how I see you." "I know. But people don't just give without expecting something back. And if they do, it's usually because they can." Her eyes clouded. "You think that's why I'm here? Because I can?" He hesitated, then looked away. "I don't know. Maybe." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind picked up, scattering snow across the porch. Inside, Emily giggled at something on the television, her laughter muffled but bright. "I don't do this for just anyone," Anna said finally. Her voice was softer now, wounded. "I do it because I care, and because she deserves warm feet. That's all." Michael looked at her, really looked. Not just the coat, or the perfect hair, or the mystery she carried, but the ache in her voice, the genuine frustration that he couldn't accept something freely given. "I'm sorry," he murmured. Anna gave a quiet nod. "It's okay. I just wish it didn't always feel like a line I wasn't allowed to cross." Then, without waiting for an answer, she handed him the box gently and turned to leave. This time, the silence she left behind didn't feel comforting. It felt like a door slowly closing. The bell above the boutique door chimed, just like last time, crisp and deliberate. The air inside was the same, clean, expensive, lightly perfumed, with something floral and cold. The lights were soft, the racks pristine, and Michael felt immediately out of place again, like a smudge on glass that didn't belong. But this time, he didn't come with Emily. No tiny hand in his, no hope of finding a coat he could afford. Just him, walking back into a space that had made him feel small because despite everything, he couldn't let the memory of it sit unspoken. He spotted her behind the counter, the same saleswoman from before. Blonde, perfect posture, manicured to the last detail. She looked up and froze for a split second. Then something changed in her eyes. Her smile snapped into place, too fast, too polished. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome back," she said, her tone syrupy sweet, practiced. Michael raised an eyebrow. Sir, last time it was barely you people. I just came to say something, he said, walking toward the counter, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. About the last time I was here. The saleswoman's expression didn't falter, but he saw her shoulders straighten. Of course, I shouldn't have let my temper get the better of me. My daughter, she really wanted that coat, and I couldn't give it to her. That's not your fault. Her lips parted slightly, a flicker of confusion, maybe even guilt passing through her gaze. Well, I appreciate you coming in. That was very thoughtful. Michael gave a short nod, then turned to leave. But something still felt off. He was almost at the door when another woman appeared from a back room. She wore a headset, clipboard in hand, and paused the moment she saw him. Mr. Turner? She asked, approaching quickly. He blinked. Yeah? We just wanted to let you know, if you ever need anything, hear anything at all, you'll be taken care of. Ms. Langford made sure of that. There it was. Michael stared at her, realization settling over him like falling snow. The sudden politeness, the unnatural deference. It wasn't about him. It was about Anna. He walked out slowly, the door shutting behind him with a soft click. He didn't know whether to feel flattered or furious. Michael didn't drive home right away. Instead, he sat behind the wheel of his beat-up sedan, parked along the curb a block from the boutique, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel. The snow had started again, light flurries drifting down, melting on the windshield, but he barely noticed. Ms. Langford made sure of that. The words echoed in his mind like a bell in an empty hall. He replayed the interaction in the boutique, the sudden shift in tone, the thinly veiled deference in the woman's voice. It hadn't been respect, it had been caution, fear even. Like she'd been warned not to cross him again, not because of who he was, but because of who Anna was. He leaned back in the seat, eyes on the falling snow. She hadn't told him much, nothing specific anyway. Just breadcrumbs, the quiet confidence, the subtle way she moved through the world, like someone used to being watched but tired of it. The car, the home, the way people treated her when they recognized her, and now, this. Anna Langford wasn't just kind or generous or private, she was important, in a way that bent the world around her. Michael rubbed his jaw, trying to piece it all together. It explained the shoes, the coat, the dinners that seemed effortless. Not gestures from someone well off, but someone who never had to think twice about price tags. Someone who could walk into a store and change the rules without raising her voice. He didn't know why the realization sat so heavily on his chest. Maybe because it reminded him just how different their lives were. How far apart their worlds stretched, no matter how close they'd grown. Or maybe it was the thought that she hadn't told him, not really. That everything he'd shared, laid bare under festival lights and coffee steam, hadn't been balanced by truth from her side. Not yet. And now, he didn't know if he wanted to ask or if he was afraid of the answer. Because whatever her world was starting to pull on his, quietly, steadily. And Michael wasn't sure whether to lean into it or start pulling away. It was just past noon when the man in the suit showed up at the garage. Michael was under the hood of a '98 Ford Taurus, elbow deep in grime, when he heard the click of expensive shoes on the concrete. Not boots, not work shoes. Polished, leather sharp, out of place in a world of oil stains and engine noise. He glanced up, wiping the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. The man was standing near the entrance, hands clasped neatly in front of him. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair cut close, a navy wool coat draped over his arm. His suit was charcoal, perfectly tailored, and his watch gleamed beneath his cuff like it had never seen a day of dirt in its life. "Can I help you?" Michael asked, wary. The man smiled politely, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're Michael Turner?" "Depends who's asking." The man extended a business card. Michael didn't take it, but he glanced down at the clean print. "Grayson Shaw, Private Client Services. I work with Ms. Langford," Grayson said smoothly. Just following up on a few matters for her. Michael stiffened. What kind of matters? Oh, nothing serious, the man said with a practiced chuckle. She's just particular. Likes to keep track of the people around her. Safety, discretion, things of that nature. Michael crossed his arms. I'm not around her. We've had a few dinners, that's it. My daughter likes her. She bought her a coat. Grayson tilted his head, studying him like a file he was still processing. Of course. Ms. Langford's very generous. And private. She values consistency. Michael's stomach turned. The man wasn't saying it outright, but the message was clear. They were watching. Measuring. Deciding if he was worth the space he'd started to take up in Anna's life. I don't need a background check to be a decent human, Michael said flatly. You can tell her that. Grayson's polite expression didn't falter, but something flickered behind his eyes. Noted. And then he turned, walked back to his luxury car without another word, and disappeared down the street like a shadow in broad daylight. Michael stood there for a long moment. The business card still untouched on the floor where it had fallen. The chill that followed had nothing to do with the snow. The coffee tasted off that morning. Michael sat at the kitchen table, trying to focus on the bills in front of him while Emily colored quietly at the other end, humming under her breath. The usual hum of the morning school prep, a slow drip from the sink, the rattle of the heater was comforting, steady. Until his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, expecting a message from the garage. Instead, it was from one of the younger guys at work. Dude, you're in the news. What the hell? Michael frowned and tapped the link. The headline hit him like a punch to the chest. Heiress in hiding. Anna Hollingsworth spotted with small-town mechanic and his daughter. His stomach sank. He read it again, slower this time, the words refusing to make sense. The article was from one of those glossy local gossip rags, the kind that fed off whispers and window photos. Grainy pictures were embedded beneath the headline of Anna laughing beside him at the Winter Light Festival, another of her crouched next to Emily, who was mid-giggle, coat zipped up to her chin. Beneath the images, the story spilled out like dirty laundry. Anna Hollingsworth, daughter of the late fashion magnate Reginald Hollingsworth and reclusive face behind the Langford Hollingsworth estate, has been keeping a low profile in town. But recent sightings with a local mechanic and his young daughter have sparked curiosity. Sources suggest a budding romance. Michael stopped reading. He set the phone down, slowly, carefully. Emily didn't notice. She was too busy drawing a fox with roller skates again. So that was her last name, Hollingsworth. A name he'd seen in fashion ads, on boutique storefronts, whispered in celebrity interviews he never paid attention to. A name worth millions. Michael stood and walked to the window, staring out at the snow-covered street. He wasn't angry, not yet, but a slow, hot unease crawled up his spine. Anna had told him bits and pieces hints of wealth, of loneliness, but never the whole truth. And now the truth was in everyone's hands. Public, loud, messy. He thought of the man in the suit. The boutique, the shoes, the look she gave him when he spoke about struggle. She had known everything about him. And he hadn't even known her name. Michael didn't go to work the next day. He called in, sick, muttered something about a fever, which wasn't far off, though the heat burning through him had nothing to do with illness. He paced the living room, phone buzzing on the counter every few hours. Messages from Anna, short, gentle. Can we talk? I'm sorry. Please don't shut me out. But he didn't reply. He couldn't. The article had blown up faster than he thought possible. By morning, it was on every local newsfeed, the headline tweaked slightly each time but the core the same. The mystery heiress with the small-town mechanic. His name was being whispered. His garage had reporters parked outside, hoping for a comment, a glimpse, anything to feed the story. And Anna? She was nowhere to be seen. He didn't know what stung more, that she had a last name powerful enough to be a headline, or that she'd never once offered it to him. He thought back to their conversations, the dinners. The moments under falling snow and flickering lights. All that warmth, all that trust, had it been real? Or had he just been another project? Emily noticed, of course. She always did. "Is Miss Anna coming over?" she asked that evening, curled on the couch in her pajamas, hugging her stuffed giraffe. Michael didn't look at her. "No, not tonight." She tilted her head. "Did something happen?" Michael ran a hand down his face, exhaling hard. "I think she wasn't who we thought she was." Emily frowned, confused. "But she's still nice, right?" He hesitated. "I don't know." He wished he did. He wished the ache in his chest would stop twisting every time her name popped into his mind. He wished he didn't keep replaying her laugh, her eyes, the way she had sat so quietly while he spoke about Sarah like it mattered to her. But more than anything, he wished she had told him the truth. Because now, all he could feel was that sharp, bitter thing he'd spent years building walls against. Betrayal. And he wasn't sure if he wanted to forgive it. Emily didn't cry right away. At first, she just asked once, then twice, then every other day. Her voice light, hopeful, like it was just a matter of time. "Is Miss Anna coming to the park with us? Can we show her my new drawing? Do you think she's busy? Or maybe she lost her phone?" Michael tried to answer gently. "Not today. She's got a lot going on. I'm not sure, kiddo." But eventually, she stopped asking, and that's when it got worse. She started drawing fewer pictures. Started leaving her coat crumpled instead of hung up. Benny the giraffe and his new cousin sat untouched on her bookshelf. And when she looked up at Michael at bedtime, eyes big and tired, she didn't ask about stories or hot chocolate. She just whispered, "Did I do something wrong?" Michael's heart cracked clean in half. "No," he said, pulling her close. "Hey, no, this isn't about you, okay? None of this is your fault." "But she stopped coming. She stopped texting. I didn't even get to say goodbye." "I know," he murmured, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I'm sorry." Because how do you explain heartbreak to a 7-year-old? How do you tell her that sometimes people mean well and still mess everything up? That sometimes trust is a fragile thing and even grown-ups don't know how to fix it when it breaks? Emily sniffled into his shirt. "She liked us. I think she still does," Michael said, though he wasn't sure if it was true or just something he needed to believe for both their sakes. "I liked her too," she whispered. "A lot." Michael kissed the top of her head, his own chest tight. "Me too, kiddo." They sat in silence for a long while, the room dim and quiet, save for the gentle tick of the clock and the low hum of the heater. Michael held his daughter a little closer that night, his arms wrapped tight around her small frame, because he knew exactly what it felt like to miss someone you weren't ready to let go of. It was a quiet evening, the kind where time slowed down just enough for Michael to feel it pressing against his ribs. The dishes were done. Emily had gone to bed early, and the TV was on but muted, flickering images across the living room like ghosts of a world he couldn't focus on. Then came the knock. Soft, hesitant. Not the kind of knock that demanded to be answered, but the kind that asked permission to be let in. Michael froze. For a moment, he considered ignoring it, pretending he didn't hear, pretending he didn't hope it was her. But something in the silence told him the truth before he even opened the door. Anna stood on the porch, wrapped in her coat, snowflakes melting into the fabric. Her hair was damp from the weather, her eyes red-rimmed and shining in the porch light. She wasn't holding a shopping bag or a fancy box. No peace offering, no shield, just herself. "I shouldn't have come without calling," she said, voice low, "but I didn't know what else to do." Michael didn't answer. He just stepped aside. Inside, the warmth hit her slowly. She stood just inside the doorway, unmoving, as if unsure whether she belonged. "I didn't lie," she said finally, turning toward him. "Not on purpose. I just didn't tell you everything. I was trying to be someone different for once, someone not attached to headlines and legacies and expectations. Just me, Michael folded his arms. And what part of you is the real one? Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. This part, right here, with you, with Emily. That was the realest I've felt in years. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt, so she kept going. I didn't want to ruin it by telling you my name. I thought, if you knew who I was, you'd treat me like everyone else does, either scared of me or trying to use me. I wasn't scared, he said quietly. I was just honest, and you didn't trust me with the same. Anna nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I know. And I'm sorry. I didn't expect any of this. I didn't expect you. Silence settled between them. Then, from down the hall, Emily's small voice called out, groggy and surprised. Miss Anna? Anna's breath caught. She looked at Michael. Unsure. He nodded once. And that was all the permission she needed to begin again. They sat at the kitchen table, long after Emily had fallen back asleep. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of old pipes and the ticking of the clock on the wall, each second a soft reminder that something was being rebuilt in the space between them. Anna cupped a mug of tea in both hands, steam curling into the air, though she hadn't taken a sip. Michael sat across from her, elbows resting on the table, waiting not pushing. Just waiting. She took a breath. My full name is Anna Hollingsworth Langford, she said finally, her voice steady but low. My father was Reginald Hollingsworth. Maybe you've seen his name on the side of buildings or at the bottom of designer ads. He built an empire from nothing. I was born into it. Michael didn't react. He just listened. I went to the best schools, had the best clothes, private tutors, security details, smiles in public, silence in private. People didn't ask who I was, only who I was with, who I was wearing, who I was dating. If I sneezed at a gala, it was in a tabloid the next day. She looked up at him. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely invisible? Michael's expression softened, but he didn't interrupt. My mother left when I was 8. She couldn't take the spotlight, couldn't take him, and my father, he loved image more than people. I learned early how to keep quiet, how to smile on cue, how to play a part that never fit. She looked down into her tea. When he died, I was expected to step into the role, run the boardroom, appear at events, pretend the weight of the name didn't crush me. But I didn't want any of it. Michael leaned back slightly, arms folded, not defensive, just absorbing. So, she said with a quiet exhale, I disappeared. Not completely, just enough. Found a place, no one knew me. Bought a house under my mother's name. Started walking more, speaking less. I just wanted to be a person again, not a headline. And then, she added softly, I met you. Michael met her eyes. She didn't flinch. And for the first time in a long time, she said, I didn't feel invisible. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, just understanding. And somehow that meant more. Michael sat in silence, the edges of Anna's words still hanging in the air like frost on glass, delicate, real, impossible to ignore. He looked at her across the table, her fingers wrapped tightly around the tea mug, her shoulders slightly curled inward like she expected him to say something that would hurt. She'd told him everything, or at least enough. More than anyone else ever had, maybe. He believed that. He really did. But belief wasn't the same as forgiveness. I appreciate you telling me, he said quietly. Really. I know that wasn't easy. Anna gave a small nod, her lips pressed into a thin line. Waiting. Michael rubbed a hand across his jaw, the stubble rough under his fingers. But I can't pretend it didn't hurt, Anna. You say you didn't lie, and maybe that's true. But hiding who you are, that still felt like a choice, and not one I was part of. She nodded again. I know, and I'm sorry. He looked down at the table, where a faint ring from her mug had soaked into the wood. His voice was lower when he spoke again. You knew about Sarah, about how hard it's been. You let me open up, be vulnerable. And I thought, he shook his head, I thought we were standing on the same ground. Anna's gaze dropped. I wanted us to be. Michael exhaled slowly. It's not that you're rich, or famous, or even that your name is in some magazine. That's not what's bothering me. What is? That you didn't trust me with the truth, and I don't know what that means for the kind of life you want, or the kind of life I can give. Silence again. Heavy, but not cold. Then, softer. But I also know that I've missed you every day since you left. Her eyes lifted to meet his. I've missed hearing from you. I've missed the quiet, the honesty, the way Emily looks at you like you hung the moon. He swallowed, voice rough. I don't know how to just forget everything. I'm not built like that. You don't have to, Anna said gently. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just hoping you'll let me try again. Michael didn't answer right away, but he didn't say no. And that, for the first time, felt like a beginning. It started with one reporter a camera crew van parked across the street from the garage, its lenses aimed like rifles through the windshield. Michael ignored it at first, thinking maybe they'd gotten bored and moved on after the first round of gossip. But by noon, there were 5 of them. Cameras, boom, mics, microphones shoved toward customers walking in and out. One even tried to catch a word from Michael as he stepped outside to grab a part from the back lot. Mr. Turner, how long have you been involved with Anna Hollingsworth? Did you know who she really was? Are the rumors about a relationship true? Have you considered how this affects her public image? Michael didn't answer, just clenched his jaw, shoved past them, and slammed the shop door behind him. The guys inside stared, half curious, half concerned. You good, Mike? One of them asked. He nodded stiffly, though everything in him was twisting. That night, a photo of him wiping grease from his hands made it onto the local evening news, mystery mechanic at the center of heiress romance. They showed his garage, his name, a blurred image of Emily from one of the festival photos. Michael turned off the TV before the segment ended. The next day, a customer canceled an appointment, muttering something about not wanting to get caught in a media circus. Another dropped off their car with a clipped, tight-lipped tone, refusing to meet Michael's eyes. People stared more, whispered when he walked into the grocery store. And through it all, Michael felt the walls of his life closing in. Everything he'd built slowly being reshaped by a story he never asked to be part of. Later, after he'd picked up Emily from school keeping his head down while teachers and parents glanced his way, he found Anna waiting outside his apartment building. No coat this time. Just a sweatshirt and tired eyes. I tried to get them to back off, she said before he could speak. I told them it was private, but it's like blood in the water. Michael stared at her. You were right, he said quietly. Your world doesn't just visit, it takes over. Anna flinched. I never meant for it to touch you like this. But it had. And now the question neither of them wanted to ask hung in the air between them. Can a life like hers ever fit into a life like his? The reporter was waiting by the garage entrance, again same guy from earlier in the week, slick haircut, too bright smile. Mike always half raised like he knew a confrontation was coming. This time, though, he stepped directly into Michael's path before he could reach the door. Mr. Turner, he said, voice eager, care to comment on the rumors that Miss Hollingsworth's involvement with you is a publicity move? Some say this is a calculated effort to soften her public image. Michael stopped cold. Something in him, the part that had always kept his head down and let people say what they wanted, cracked. He looked past the camera, past the boom mic, past the notebook, waiting to turn him into a headline, and saw Anna in his mind's eye. Quiet, brave, offering parts of herself that had never been safe to share, and they were trying to twist it to tear it apart. He took a step forward. You want to comment? He asked, voice low. The reporter raised his brows, surprised. Yes, we'd love to. Anna Hollingsworth, Michael said clearly, is the most genuine person I've met in my life. She didn't come to this town looking for attention. She came here looking for peace, for realness. The camera light blinked on. She didn't buy me. She didn't manipulate me. She sat with my daughter on cold nights and listened to her talk about roller skating foxes. She brought groceries when we were short. She laughed at bad jokes and cried when she was scared. She's not a headline. She's a human being. The crowd around them had stilled. A customer paused mid-walk toward the bay. One of the guys from the garage leaned out the office door, wide-eyed. Michael took a breath, his voice steady. And if you can't see past her last name long enough to understand that, then maybe the story isn't about her. Maybe it's about you. The reporter opened his mouth, then closed it again. Michael didn't wait for a response. He turned, walked back inside, and let the door slam shut behind him. For the first time since everything blew up, he felt like himself again. And maybe, just maybe, that was the version Anna had seen all along. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where snow blanketed the world like a hush no one wanted to break. Michael stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, while Emily sat cross-legged at the kitchen table, coloring in a picture of a giraffe in a cape. Her new favorite thing, apparently. "Dad," she said after a moment, her voice soft but sure. "Can I ask you something?" Michael turned down the burner and glanced over his shoulder. "Always." Emily looked up from her drawing, eyes serious in that way only kids could manage. "If Miss Anna comes over again, can she stay for Christmas?" Michael blinked. "Christmas? She doesn't have anyone, right?" Emily continued, as if she hadn't just cracked open a piece of him. "She said her dad's gone, and she never talks about a mom. I think maybe she's lonelier than she pretends." Michael leaned against the counter, suddenly forgetting all about the pancakes. "She brought cookies last time," Emily added thoughtfully. "And she knows how to do those pretty ribbon things with presents. I think she'd make Christmas nicer." He smiled faintly. "It's not about the cookies, is it?" Emily shook her head. "Nope, it's about the family part." He walked over and knelt beside her, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. "What makes you think she wants that?" "Because when she's here, she looks happy," Emily said, matter of fact. "Like her shoulders forget they're supposed to be tight." Michael swallowed, the lump rising in his throat unexpected and raw. "I miss her," Emily added quietly. "Not just the fun parts, all of her." Michael didn't answer right away. He looked down at the picture she'd drawn: a giraffe, a little girl, and a tall woman with brown hair, all standing under a Christmas tree. No labels, no fancy names. Just three people. A family. He kissed the top of Emily's head, then stood. "I miss her too," he said softly, and somewhere deep in his chest, the last of the fear started to give way. Maybe it was time to stop wondering if their lives fit together. Maybe it was time to start building something that did. The snow fell, like it had been waiting for this moment. Soft, slow, and quiet fat flakes drifting through the air like confetti from some unseen celebration. Michael stood outside Anna's house, heart thudding hard beneath his coat, hands shoved deep in his pockets, not from the cold, but from nerves. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. He'd just shown up. She answered the door within seconds, like she'd been waiting too. "Hey," she said, her breath visible in the cold. Her hair was down, her cheeks flushed, sweater sleeves pushed to her elbows like she'd been cleaning or pacing or maybe both. "Hey," he replied, voice hoarse. Neither of them moved. Then Anna stepped onto the porch, gently pulling the door shut behind her. The snow dusted her shoulders and clung to her lashes, and still she looked like the calm in the middle of a storm. "I'm sorry I didn't call," Michael said. I couldn't stop thinking about what Emily said." Anna smiled faintly. "The Christmas wish?" He nodded. "That and what she sees when you're with us, when you're here." Anna swallowed, eyes soft. "And what do you see?" Michael stepped closer. "Someone I want here. Every day. Not just for Christmas. Not just for the good parts. For all of it." Her breath caught, and for a moment, it was like the world narrowed down to that single patch of porch under a snowfall that hushed everything but the beat of their hearts. "I was scared," he continued, "of how different our lives are, of what it'd mean to let you in and have you leave. but I'm more scared of not trying." Anna looked up at him, eyes shining. "I never wanted to leave. I just didn't know how to stay." "You do now," he said. And then, finally, she leaned in. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. Their noses bumped slightly. His hand was cold against her cheek, but when their lips met, none of that mattered. The kiss was warm, steady, and filled with everything they hadn't said. Every glance, every unspoken promise, every piece of trust rebuilt. When they pulled apart, the snow was still falling. But for once, it felt like the storm had passed. Winter lingered longer than usual that year, as if the town itself didn't want to let go of the stillness. But something had shifted, not just in the season but in Michael. He noticed it first in small ways. The garage, which had been struggling under the weight of bills and rusted-out equipment, suddenly received a grant from a local revitalization fund. Anonymous, but everyone knew where it came from. No press release, no ribbon cutting. Just a discreet envelope and enough funding to finally replace the lift that had been giving them trouble for months. Then it was the town's after-school program. Emily came home beaming, waving a flyer announcing a new reading room with donated books, cozy beanbags, and updated heating. "They said a mystery donor made it happen." She'd grinned. Michael knew the signature. Not in ink, but in intent. He pulled Anna aside one evening, as they were walking home from the market, their breath misting the air. "You're helping the whole town now?" She smiled, eyes fixed on the snow-dusted sidewalk. "Only a little, quietly. You didn't have to do that." "I know," she said, slipping her gloved hand into his. "But I want to. That's the difference." He nodded, still getting used to this new rhythm between them. It wasn't about money. Not anymore. It was about intention. And he was finally beginning to understand that her generosity wasn't a power play, it was her way of showing care, of reaching out in the only language her world had ever taught her. She didn't throw money at problems. She invested in people. And she never once tried to change him. He still worked the garage, still packed Emily's lunches, still lived in the same apartment with the creaky floorboards and the crooked cabinet. But now, Anna was there on weekends, helping Emily with her drawings, cooking dinner that didn't come from a box, laughing in his kitchen like it had always been hers, too. They weren't perfect, but they were trying, together. And that, Michael realized, was more powerful than any gift money could buy, because love wasn't about lifting someone out of their life. It was about stepping into it and choosing to stay. The days didn't change all at once. There was no grand announcement, no moving trucks, no formal decision. Just small shifts like how Anna's coat began hanging next to theirs by the door, or how Emily stopped calling it Miss Anna's house and started saying ours without thinking. Michael noticed it most in the quiet spaces. Like the way Anna folded laundry while humming under her breath, or how she and Emily bickered gently over which bedtime story to read next, both of them laughing before either one finished their argument. They had dinner together most nights now, sometimes at the apartment, sometimes at Anna's, sometimes picnic-style in the back of the garage after a long day, with sandwiches wrapped in paper and oil stains on Michael's coveralls. It didn't matter where. What mattered was who. Michael didn't remember the exact moment his guard came down. Maybe it was the third night in a row Anna stayed late helping Emily build a school project. Or the morning she made coffee without asking where he kept the filters. Or the day he caught her humming the same lullaby Sarah used to sing, not because she'd heard it before, but because it was instinct now. They hadn't defined anything, not in words. But the rhythm of life had changed. They were building something, not just sharing space, but blending it, slowly, thoughtfully. Like the careful weaving of three lives that had once been separate threads. On one especially cold night, Michael walked into the living room to find Emily curled up between Anna and a blanket, both of them asleep, heads resting against each other. The fireplace glowed low. Outside, snow tapped softly at the windows. He stood there for a long moment, watching. Not because he couldn't believe it, but because, after everything, he could. He finally understood. Home wasn't where you started. It wasn't square footage or a name on the mailbox. It wasn't even a house. It was this: shared laughter in a space that welcomed it. Worn-out shoes by the door, two voices waiting for yours to join them. A life not given, but earned, together. The snow fell steadily that morning, blanketing the world in stillness and white. The kind of quiet that made everything feel softer, more sacred. Inside the apartment, the air was warm and smelled of cinnamon and pine. Twinkle lights blinked along the windowsill, casting gentle reflections on the floor, and soft holiday music played low from a speaker in the corner. Emily was the first to wake. She tore into the living room in fuzzy socks and flannel pajamas, her curls wild from sleep, her eyes wide with joy. "It's Christmas!" she whispered loudly, like the room itself might forget if she didn't say it out loud. Michael was already up, sitting on the couch with a mug of coffee, the first real smile of the day tugging at his face. "Merry Christmas, kiddo." Anna followed a moment later, wrapped in a blanket, her hair pulled back, still blinking the sleep from her eyes. "You started without me?" Emily ran to her, wrapping her arms around Anna's waist. "We waited, but just barely." They gathered around the small tree they decorated together 2 weeks early, homemade ornaments, strands of popcorn, a crooked star Emily had insisted on taping to the top. Beneath it were only a few gifts, wrapped in mismatched paper and string. No big show, no fanfare. But somehow, it felt perfect. Emily opened a new sketchbook and a set of watercolor pencils from Anna. "They're the fancy kind," she whispered in awe. Anna unwrapped a handmade ornament shaped like a giraffe painted by Emily and signed on the back with a heart. And Michael opened a leather-bound notebook, simple and clean, with a note inside from Anna. "For the stories you've never told but should." He looked at her, then, something swelling in his chest that had nothing to do with gifts or glitter or holiday magic. Just love. Quiet, constant, earned. There were no photographers, no headlines, no curated perfection. Just a little girl drawing beside the fireplace, a woman who chose to stay, and a man who never thought he'd have more than just making it day by day now, holding everything he never knew he needed: family, home, peace, and the promise that, for once, this was only the beginning.